4 American service members are dead tonight. Brent crude has spiked above $82 a barrel in intraday trading, and 150 oil tankers are sitting motionless in the waters around the Strait of Hormuz, according to Reuters. Because the most critical oil choke point on Earth has effectively shut down. Just in. As of this morning, March 2, 2026, the United States is on day 3 of Operation Epic Fury, the largest American military operation in the Middle East since the 2003 invasion of Iraq, launched without a single vote from Congress. The S&P 500 plunged 1.2% at the open today. Gasoline just broke $3 a gallon nationwide for the first time in 2026, according to AAA. European wholesale natural gas prices surged 50% after QatarEnergy, one of the world's largest LNG suppliers, halted production following Iranian drone strikes on its facilities, as reported by Al Jazeera and Bloomberg on March 2nd. Your heating bill, your grocery bill, your commute, all of it is being repriced right now because of decisions made without your input. But here's the question that matters more than any oil chart. If this president ran for office in 2024 on the explicit promise of no new wars, and if a bipartisan war powers vote was already scheduled in the Senate before the first bomb dropped, why were the strikes launched 72 hours before that vote could happen? That answer exists in the documented record, and what it reveals should concern every American, regardless of party. Here is what they are not telling you. On February 25, 2026, President Trump delivered his State of the Union address. It ran 1 hour and 47 minutes, a record length. According to analysis highlighted by CNN's Fareed Zakaria, the president spent exactly 3 minutes on Iran. 3 minutes to explain why armed conflict with a nation of 90 million people, a nation that sits astride 20% of the world's oil transit, had suddenly become so urgent that no congressional authorization was necessary. The Guardian reported on February 28 that this stands in stark contrast to the lead-up to the 2003 Iraq War, when President George W. Bush spent months publicly building a case, however flawed, for military action. This time, there was no sustained public argument. Senator Tim Kaine, Democrat of Virginia, told NPR on February 28, quote, "0. The evidence suggests that the Secretary of State called the Speaker of the House, and that was it. We did not receive notice." Kaine then added, quote, "The White House knew that I had a war powers resolution scheduled for vote by the Senate early next week. I assume they wanted to rush the initiation of an illegal war before Congress had a chance to vote on it." The timing of this cannot be ignored, and the public's response to what happened next is something Washington was not prepared for. The numbers do not lie. A CNN poll conducted by SSRS on February 28 and March 1, sampling 1,004 adults nationwide, found that 59% of Americans disapprove of the decision to strike Iran. Strong disapproval hit 31%, roughly double the 16% who strongly approve. Only 27% feel the United States made enough of an effort at diplomacy before resorting to military force. 60% say Trump should get congressional approval before taking any further action. 62% say they do not believe he has a clear plan. A separate Reuters Ipsos poll from the same weekend found only 27% of Americans back the strikes outright, while 43% disapprove. And here is a number that should alarm the White House heading into midterms. 54% of Americans say Iran will become more of a threat to the United States as a result of this military action, not less. Even among those who approve of the strikes, roughly 40% are unconvinced the operation will reduce the danger. These are not fringe surveys. These are nationally representative samples from CNN, SSRS, and Reuters Ipsos, conducted within 48 hours of the first strike. And yet, the political fracture this war is causing goes far beyond poll numbers. The division is not just Democrats versus Republicans. It is running straight through the heart of the president's own base. Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican of South Carolina, praised the operation on social media, writing, quote, "The end of the largest state sponsor of terrorism is upon us. God bless President Trump, our military, and our allies in Israel." Senator Tom Cotton, Republican of Arkansas and chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, told CNN on March 2nd, quote, "I suspect you'll see overwhelming support from elected Republicans in the Congress. But conservative broadcaster Tucker Carlson, one of the most prominent voices in the MAGA movement, called the strikes, quote, absolutely disgusting and evil, in comments reported by ABC News on February 28th. Former Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was once among Trump's closest allies on Capitol Hill, publicly accused the administration of betraying the America First agenda. Representative Thomas Massie, Republican of Kentucky, described the operation as, quote, acts of war unauthorized by Congress, and said the war is not America First. Representative Jim Himes, the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, called it, quote, a war of choice with no strategic endgame. Remember the question about the timing of the strikes and the scheduled Senate vote? Because the president who said on election night 2024, quote, I'm not going to start wars, is now telling the New York Times this conflict could last, quote, 4 to 5 weeks. Let that sink in for a moment. And what 4 to 5 weeks of this will cost you personally is where the documented projections start to get alarming. And this is where it gets personal. Within days, and likely within hours, you are going to pay more at the pump. Reuters reported on March 1st that average gasoline prices broke above $3 a gallon nationwide, up from $2.85 just weeks ago in February. Analyst Patrick DeHaan of GasBuddy told Reuters that prices were already heading toward $3.10 to $3.25 for the summer blend, and that the conflict now, quote, puts higher numbers in play. Tom Kloza, senior advisor at fuel supplier Gulf, told Reuters that a $5 per barrel increase in crude translates to roughly 12 cents more per gallon, but some wholesale suppliers had already pushed prices up by 25 cents. That is the immediate hit. In the medium term, the damage goes deeper than your gas tank. Ken Medlock, senior director at Rice University's Baker Institute, told CNBC that if oil rises $10 per barrel, gasoline climbs about 25 cents per gallon, and within a week, quote, everyone is going to be paying a little more than they are right now. But consider what this means for everything else you buy. Mark Zandi, chief economist at Moody's Analytics, told Newsweek on March 2nd that higher oil prices will, quote, weigh on growth and push inflation higher, and will, quote, heighten Americans' affordability concerns and complicate the conduct of monetary policy, as the Fed will be unsure whether to respond to the weaker growth by lowering rates or to the higher inflation by raising rates. Translation: the Federal Reserve may be frozen, unable to help. Allianz Global Investors published analysis on March 2nd, estimating that a 5 to 10% increase in oil prices typically adds 0.1 to 0.3 percentage points to headline U.S. inflation almost immediately. Zandi further calculated that every sustained 1 cent increase in the price of a gallon of gasoline costs American consumers an additional $1.4 billion over the course of a year. And the long-term projection is worse. Morgan Stanley strategists, led by Michael Wilson, warned on March 2nd that if crude oil hits $100 per barrel, which analysts at Wood Mackenzie say is plausible if the Strait of Hormuz remains disrupted, it would materially damage the bank's bull case for American stocks this year. Citigroup, in a note reported by Reuters, now projects Brent crude trading between $80 and $90 per barrel over the coming week alone. Lloyd's List Intelligence reported that Strait of Hormuz vessel transits collapsed 81% on Sunday, March 1st, compared to the previous Sunday. 150 vessels are anchored and waiting. And remember, who pushed for strikes before the Senate could vote on war powers? We are about to get to that. Here is what the documented record shows when you trace the timeline. Senator Kaine's bipartisan war powers resolution, co-sponsored with Senator Rand Paul, Republican of Kentucky, was formally scheduled for a Senate vote in the week beginning March 3rd, according to NPR reporting from March 2nd. The strikes were launched on February 28th, 72 hours before that scheduled vote. Kaine told NPR the administration gave Congress zero formal notice. The Guardian reported the only outreach was a phone call from Secretary of State Rubio to the Speaker of the House. NPR reported on March 2nd that Representative Ro Khanna, Democrat of California, told NBC's Meet the Press he gives the House War Powers resolution a 40 to 60% chance of advancing this week, but acknowledged Democrats would need to hold their own ranks together, specifically naming Representative Josh Gottheimer, Democrat of New Jersey, as a potential defection. Most Republicans are expected to block it. There are 3 documented possible explanations for why the strikes were launched on the eve of that vote. First, that a narrow intelligence window on Khamenei's location dictated timing, as suggested by administration statements reported by the New York Times. Second, that launching before the vote neutralized a political obstacle, as Senator Kaine explicitly alleged to NPR. Third, that the joint operation with Israel required operational synchronization that superseded the congressional calendar, a possibility raised in Guardian and Wall Street Journal reporting. Each explanation is grounded in named sourcing. None has been confirmed or denied by the White House as of today. The question of which explanation is true is not one I can answer for you, but it is a question that is now sitting before Congress, before the courts, and before every voter in America. Here's the documented case, all in one frame. The president who campaigned on no new wars has launched the most significant American military operation in the Middle East in over 2 decades. 4 U.S. service members are dead in 3 days. Oil has surged past $80 a barrel. Brent hit 82 intraday. 150 tankers are stranded near the Strait of Hormuz. QatarEnergy has halted LNG production. European natural gas prices surged 50%. The S&P 500 fell 1.2% at the open. Gasoline crossed $3 a gallon. Inflation risks are rising. The Federal Reserve may be paralyzed. 59% of Americans disapprove. Tucker Carlson, one of Trump's most visible allies, called it evil. And Congress never voted. This is documented. This is not opinion. So here is the question you should be asking your senator and your representative before the week is out. Did they know the strikes were coming? And will they vote yes or no on the War Powers resolution scheduled for midweek? Here's a question worth debating, and I genuinely want your answer in the comments. If a majority of Americans oppose this war, if Congress never authorized it, and if the president's own base is fracturing over it, at what point does an unauthorized military operation become a constitutional crisis? If the Moody's Analytics warning about inflation landing on your household budget concerns you, send this to someone who needs to understand what is heading for their wallet this week. We are tracking 3 things in real time: the War Powers vote, the oil price trajectory, and the Strait of Hormuz shipping data, and what we have uncovered about the 72 hours inside the White House before February 28th will be the focus of our next report. If you want that investigation the moment it drops, subscribe to this channel right now and turn on notifications, because the next 3 days in Congress may determine whether this war escalates into something the American economy cannot absorb, or whether it gets checked by the institution that was supposed to authorize it in the first place.